Hi, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge and welcome to my first book review of 2019. Wow, I'm even saying the wrong year. I haven't had to write the date down yet, so then it doesn't really sink in until you have to write it down. But anyway, I just wanted to pop in and do a quick, mostly non-spoiler review. I'm going to do a couple spoilers just because I really want to talk to someone about this, but of course I will totally warn you, and there isn't a ton to really spoil in this, but anyway, let's just jump in. I just read The Fork, the Witch, and the Worm, which is Tales from Allegasia, Volume 1 by Christopher Paolini. So this is a novella set 1 year after the events of the Inheritance series, and it follows Eragon through a couple little situations. I'm going to explain this more in a minute, but I'm just trying to give you, the context for this. So what is the main setup for this then? So getting that out of the way, no, there are spoilers for Allegasia, for Inheritance series, but I'm not going to spoil this until I warn you. I'm just going to tell you what the context is for reading this story. And if you have already read the Inheritance series, you're going to know that. So the setup for this is it takes place 1 year after the events of the Inheritance series. So you'll know that the way that ended, Saphira and Eragon were going off to set up a safe haven and school for new dragon riders. They had a bunch of dragon eggs that they saved, that the Eldonari had been keeping hidden so that Galbatorix couldn't get a hold of them and manipulate them. And so Eragon and Saphira are working hard to create a safe enough environment for the eggs to start hatching so that they can start having new dragons and start replenishing them, because there are only 3 living dragons left at the end of the series, and only one of them is a female, which is Saphira. So that's the setup of this. Eragon's feeling really kind of pressured by all the work he has to do. He's basically running his own town because all the different races have sent representatives to be there and help him set this up, because they're going to try to let all races have an opportunity to become a dragon rider, because it was usually only humans and elves, and now they want the Urgles and the dwarves to have an opportunity to be a dragon rider as well, to continue the peace that's happened before. So that is kind of where this starts off. Eragon's feeling really run down by all the work. He isn't really getting to do dragon ridery things. He's having to be, and he's still really young. Let's remember, he was still only 17 when the series ends. And he's had a lot of life happen. So this is broken into 3 tales. There's one that involves a fork, one that involves a witch, and one that involves a worm. And there are these 3 different stories that get told to him by different people. So the way that it's broken up is it's in 9 chapters, and so each story has a little prequel and then the story and then something after it. So it's basically 3 little short stories, but he puts them in one continuous story, which is pretty nice. Anyway, so that is kind of the non-spoilery part of this. I'm not going to go into too many spoilers, but if you want to stick around, I'm going to tell you, my feelings about it. I did rate this 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. There are a couple things I didn't like, but I'm going to go into them in the spoilery part. The main thing for you is, if you love the Inheritance cycle, of course you're going to want to read this, as well as, I hate to tell you this, but it's only going to make you want another book more. And Christopher does definitely, there are some threads in there set up for what is supposed to be a 5th book. And in it, he says there won't be a 5th in the Inheritance cycle, but he's also said in interviews that he plans to go back to the world, but it's not going to be the Inheritance cycle. It's going to be another novel that may have other people as the main focus. And then of course Eragon would be in the world because he's one of the only 3 dragon riders that we have. So anyway, there we go. You should definitely check it out. Now I'm going to talk about a few spoilers, so you've been warned, time to leave. There isn't a lot in this book, so if you don't want to know any more than that, now's the time to go. Okay? All right. Bye. So the 3 different stories we have, and I'm going to kind of tell you who they're told to Eragon by and then who they're about, which was the funnest part. So the first story takes place, Eragon has been like working really hard and everything, and Saphira tells him he needs to take a break, and he doesn't want to take a break. But then he goes to talk to Glader, who is in his, Eldunari. He's his egg-shaped heart of hearts or whatever, which is where a dragon's consciousness stays after they die. And Glader and the other Eldunari tell him a story to help him relax, because they're like, you won't make good decisions, you won't be a good leader if you're tense all the time or you're worried. So they tell him a story. And it starts out really innocuous. Like, I thought it was kind of going to be like a fable, or they were going to, teach him a lesson so that he could be more in the moment or whatever. Well, it ends up being this cute little story about a girl named Essie, who she's being bullied, and her family owns a tavern. And then these bad guys come into the tavern, cause a fight, blah, blah, blah. And there's this one guy there who we don't really know who he is, but he ends up like saving them, and he puts a spell on this fork. And so if the bully bothers her again, she basically can like threaten her with this fork or whatever, which isn't the best thing to teach your kids about bullying. However, we find out that shadowy figure is Murtagh. So we get to see a thing from Murtagh, and then we know that he's still out there and he is searching for something. And we also find out that Nasuda, who is the human queen right now of Allegasia, or the ruler of Allegasia, she has like banned use of magic if you're not part of the Duvangrada. And so Murtagh is kind of doing magic that he shouldn't be doing. And so you can kind of see how there's like some friction with that, because just a little bit though. Like, again, there's only hints at it, because I feel like Christopher doesn't want to commit to anything at this point. Anyway, but it was so interesting. Murtagh is one of my favorite characters. He was so interesting to me in the original series, and I think a lot of people will feel that way as well. That was the most exciting one for me because of Murtagh. The second story is The Witch, and this is the one that's really fun because it's actually written by Angela Paolini, who is the inspiration for Angela the Witch, because Christopher mapped her after his sister, and so she actually writes Angela's story in there, and it's cute, and it has to do with Angela finding Elva, the girl that Eragon cursed on accident, and she's been having some temperament issues, which she's had a tough life. The girl is technically only like 2 years old, and she has issues. So Angela is enticing the girl to come and train with her so that she can lose some of her angst and actually help people. And that's what Angela wants to help her with. So it's a cute little story. It actually wasn't my favorite one, but it was fun to see Angela and Solemnbum, and we don't quite know what's going to happen with Elva. So there's also a setup for that. I have always felt that Elva could turn into a villain because her powers are freaky and I don't fully understand them. So I don't know. I hope she's not a villain, but I foresee that she could be if not taken care of properly. And then finally, which when I started reading this final story, I was like, oh, this is super boring, but it actually was very interesting. So for the final story, Eragon goes to hang out with the Urgles. There has just been some deaths in camp due to an accident. And so Eragon goes to hang out with them because the Urgles are kind of like, they just roll with the punches. And one of the Urgles ends up telling Eragon a story. So he tells this story around the campfire. And it was the longest part of the book, actually. But it's the story about this girl named Ilgra, who this dragon on the cover, he's called the Worm of Kalkaraz. And he had been tormenting her village, and she spends most of her life coming up with a revenge plan to take down this horrible dragon, only to have things not work out quite the way that she thought they would. So for me, this was the hardest story to get into because I was like, I don't want to just read an Urgle story, but it ended up being a really, really fun story. And it was just a really cool insight into them, and it had a little lesson for Eragon at the end. And then the story ends with a dragon egg hatching. And so we don't know who it hatched for or who the new dragon will be, but it was very exciting because Eragon and Saphira have hope for the future, and that's kind of how it ends. This little novella ends with them being like, we're doing it. We've made a place safe enough and welcoming enough that this dragon feels that it can hatch here. So it'll be really cool to see who it hatched for, who this new dragon is. I hope it's another girl, because besides Saphira, they've all been male dragons. So that would be really fun. But anyway, it was just a really fun use of my time. I read this all on New Year's Day, pretty much. And yeah, it was so great. So if you love the Inheritance cycle, you're definitely going to want to do this. And again, I did only give it 4 stars, and I should tell you those reasons right up. Straight up, it's really clunky in between the 3 stories because, like I said, each one of those tales has like a prequel and then an ending part, which is why it's 9 chapters, because each thing has 3. And some of it just felt really clunky, and I was just like, okay, just, you know, and there isn't really like a beginning, middle, and end to it, because and the way he wrote it as like a whole book, like it's chapter 1 through 9, it just didn't feel quite right to me. I don't know. And then the other reason it's only 4 stars, and you'll know this because I'm an emotional reader, guys, so this makes sense to me, is that all it did was make me want more. And so the whole time I was reading it, it was really bittersweet, like the entire time, because this is how big it is when we're used to books that are this big. So I had to be honest, and I had to knock a little bit off, because the whole time I was reading it, I had this like feeling of like, oh my word, I've read another page. And even like, look at the pages, like there's hardly any words on them. It's 274 pages, but there's like hardly any words on a page. So it goes very fast. So I just had to be honest. That's why it's 4 stars. There's only one novella ever that I've rated a 5-star. And so it's not as surprising. Like a 4-star for a novella is very, very good for me. So anyway, definitely check this out. This was The Fork, the Witch, and the Worm by Christopher Paolini. It is a collection of short-ish stories, and it was great. So thanks so much for checking this out. If you like this, please give it a thumbs up. I put up new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye!